The first sign of trouble came from a small observatory in New Mexico. Tom Miller, a night shift operator, noticed something odd about the readings from their deep space scanner. At first, he thought it was a glitch, the kind that happens sometimes during the midnight shift. But after triple-checking the data, his hands started to shake. "Sir," he called his supervisor, trying to keep his voice steady, "you need to see this." Within hours, every major observatory on Earth confirmed the same thing. A massive fleet of unknown objects was approaching the outer edges of the solar system. They moved in perfect formation, their speed and trajectory leaving no doubt. These were ships, and they were headed straight for Earth. Admiral James Walker stood at the window of the Emergency Defense Council chamber, his weathered face reflecting in the glass. Behind him, representatives from every major nation argued about how to respond to this unprecedented situation. At 62, Walker had spent most of his life protecting Earth's interests in space. But nothing in his decades of service had prepared him for this. "Ladies and gentlemen," he turned to address the room, his deep voice cutting through the chaos. "We need to make a decision. These objects will reach Mars' orbit in less than 48 hours. The chamber fell silent. On the massive screen behind him, satellite images showed the approaching fleet. Even the most conservative estimates put their number at over 300 vessels, each one larger than anything humanity had ever built. "What do they want?" asked the Indian representative, voicing the question on everyone's mind. As if in answer, every screen in the room suddenly went dark. When they came back on, a face appeared, if you could call it that. The being had gray-blue skin and 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern. Its voice came through in perfect English, though its mouth moved strangely. "People of Earth," it said, "I am High Commander Maxis of the Galactic Imperial Fleet. Your world has been chosen to join the Empire. Prepare for integration." Walker watched the faces around the room pale. The Chinese representative stood up first. "And if we refuse?" The alien's upper eyes narrowed. "Refusal is not an option. The Empire brings order to chaos, progress to primitive worlds. We offer you advancement beyond your current understanding. The alternative," the commander paused, all 4 eyes blinking in sequence, "would be unfortunate." After the transmission ended, the room erupted again. Walker turned to his assistant, Jane Porter, who was already pulling up data on her tablet. "What are our options?" "Limited, sir," she replied, her fingers flying over the screen. "Our most advanced weapons systems might take down 1 or 2 of their smaller ships, based on their energy readings. But against a fleet this size..." She shook her head. Walker nodded, but something about the situation bothered him. He'd spent years studying theoretical first contact scenarios. This felt wrong. Too direct. Too aggressive. Any civilization advanced enough for interstellar travel should understand the danger of cultural shock. Unless they didn't care. "Get me everything we have on their communication systems," he ordered, "and find out if anyone else received different messages. There's more happening here than they're showing us." Over the next 24 hours, Earth changed. Streets in major cities emptied as people stayed home, glued to their screens. Military bases worldwide went into high alert, and in secret bunkers across the globe, humanity's leaders prepared for the most important diplomatic meeting in history. But Admiral Walker wasn't at any of those meetings. Instead, he sat in his office, studying the data from that first transmission. Something in the background of the alien commander's message had caught his attention. A shadow, moving in a way that suggested fear. These beings, for all their power, were hiding something. As the sun set over Washington, D.C., Walker made a decision. Earth wouldn't just roll over for these invaders. If the Galactic Empire wanted Earth, they'd have to learn a hard lesson about humanity. Sometimes the most dangerous opponent is the one you underestimate. He picked up his secure phone and dialed a number few people knew existed. "This is Admiral Walker. Initiate Protocol 0. And get me direct lines to every major military power. It's time we showed our visitors what Earth can really do." The game was about to begin, and humanity was playing for keeps. 3 days after first contact, the Imperial delegation arrived at the newly established meeting point on the moon. They had insisted on this location, probably thinking Earth's leaders would be impressed by their easy space travel. Instead, Admiral Walker watched from the observation deck as 5 human shuttles smoothly landed alongside the alien craft. "Not bad for primitives, eh?" he muttered to himself. The meeting room inside the moon base was large and circular, with Earth visible through the reinforced windows. Walker sat with the other Earth representatives, studying the Imperial delegation as they entered. Their leader, Lord Maxis, walked in first. He was taller than the others, his gray-blue skin almost shimmering under the lights. "We are pleased you chose to be reasonable," Maxis said, his 4 eyes scanning the room. "The integration process will begin immediately. We have prepared a list of requirements." Walker noticed how Maxis didn't sit down, choosing to stand over them instead. A power play, obviously. The Admiral had seen plenty of those in his time. The requirements turned out to be demands. Earth would hand over control of its military. All space operations would be managed by Imperial officers. And most importantly, Earth would provide resources to the Empire. "What kind of resources?" asked the Brazilian representative, her voice sharp. Maxis waved his hand, projecting a hologram of various minerals and elements. "Your world is rich in materials we need. We will establish extraction facilities immediately." Walker kept his face neutral, but his mind was racing. During the presentation, his hidden scanner was picking up everything about the Imperial technology. Jane Porter would analyze it all later. That's when something unexpected happened. As Maxis turned to answer a question, Walker's tablet vibrated. A message had somehow slipped through their security. "Earth must notsub Empire destroys all. We are uicate remains of World 247. Resist." Walker carefully passed his tablet to the Chinese general beside him, who passed it on. Soon, all Earth's representatives had seen it. "Is there a problem?" Maxis asked, noticing their distraction. "No problem," Walker replied smoothly. "We're just discussing your generous offer." Later, in a secure room deep under the moon base, Earth's leaders gathered again. The message wasn't the only thing they'd discovered. Walker's scans had revealed interesting details about Imperial technology. "They're not as advanced as they want us to think," Jane explained, pointing to her analysis. "Their ships are powerful, yes, but they rely completely on quantum communications. They have no backup systems, no redundancy. Overconfidence," Walker added. "They've been the biggest power for so long, they'd forgotten how to think differently." The Russian president leaned forward. "What are you suggesting, Admiral?" "I'm suggesting we play along. Make them think we're submitting." Walker stood up and walked to the window, looking at Earth hanging in the black sky. "Meanwhile, we prepare. They expect us to use their kind of technology, their kind of weapons, but humanity has something they've forgotten about." "And what's that?" someone asked. Walker smiled. "Creativity, innovation, and about 100 years' worth of obsolete technology they won't see coming." The next day, Earth's representatives met with Maxis again. They acted properly humble, asked the right questions, made the right noises about cooperation. But underneath, plans were already in motion. In hidden facilities around the world, old Cold War equipment was being pulled out of storage. Military satellites were quietly switching to backup systems that used no quantum technology at all. And in every major city, people began preparing for what was coming. As Walker watched Maxis leave the moon base, satisfied with Earth's apparent submission, he thought about that secret message again. World 247. How many other worlds had the Empire destroyed? How many civilizations had they stripped bare and discarded? "Enjoy your victory, Lord Maxis," he whispered. "It won't last long." Because Earth wasn't going to be just another conquest. Earth was going to be the Empire's biggest mistake. 1 month into Earth's peaceful integration with the Galactic Empire, Admiral Walker stood in an underground facility in the Rocky Mountains. Around him, hundreds of technicians worked at computers that hadn't seen the light of day since the 1980s. Status report. He called out to Jane Porter, who was coordinating the operation. "Old no-raid systems are fully operational, sir," she replied, looking up from a massive old computer terminal. "The Empire sensors can't even detect them. They're too primitive to register on their scans." Walker allowed himself a small smile. Sometimes, the old ways were the best ways. The Empire's representatives had grown comfortable with Earth's apparent submission. Every day, they demanded more resources, more control, more access to Earth's infrastructure. And every day, Earth appeared to give them exactly what they wanted. But beneath the surface, humanity was preparing for war. In a secret factory in Siberia, workers modified old radio equipment to interfere with Imperial quantum communications. In the Australian outback, engineers tested missiles that used no electronics at all, just mechanical systems that the Empire's defenses couldn't detect. And in underground bases worldwide, soldiers trained with a mixture of old and new weapons. "Sir," a young technician ran up to Walker, holding a printout. "We intercepted another message from the Resistance Network. More worlds are willing to help." Walker took the paper. Over the past weeks, they'd made contact with other civilizations that had suffered under Imperial rule. Many had been watching Earth closely, hoping someone would finally stand up to the Empire. "How many?" he asked. 12 worlds so far," Jane answered, "all waiting for our signal." Walker nodded and walked to the main control room. The walls were covered with maps and charts, all paper, nothing digital that the Empire could hack. Red dots marked Imperial fleet positions. Blue dots showed Earth's hidden defense installations. In orbit, Imperial ships patrolled proudly, their crews never suspecting that the primitive missiles aimed at them could still pierce their advanced shields. The Empire had forgotten about simple kinetic weapons, about the devastating power of a tungsten rod dropped from orbit. Lord Maxis had scheduled another meeting for tomorrow. He wanted to discuss expanding resource extraction operations. What he didn't know was that most of those operations were fake, carefully crafted illusions to keep the Empire satisfied while Earth prepared. "Admiral," Jane called from her station, "the last pieces are in place. All major military powers report ready." Walker picked up a red phone, a direct line to the world's leaders. "Operation Throwback is ready to begin. Awaiting final authorization." One by one, the responses came in. China was ready. Russia was ready. The European Union, India, Brazil, all ready. The United States President was last to respond. Authorization granted. God help us all. Walker turned to his staff. "Send the message to our allies in the Empire. Tell them to be ready. In 48 hours, we show the Empire why you should never underestimate Earth." That night, as Walker looked out over the moonlit mountains, he thought about what was coming. Tomorrow, they would attend Maxis's meeting as usual. They would bow and scrape and agree to his demands. And the day after that, humanity would reveal its true face. In his quarters, Walker opened an old book, Sun Tzu's Art of War. He'd been reading it a lot lately. One quote stood out: "Appear weak when you are strong, and strong when you are weak." Earth had appeared weak for long enough. Soon, the Empire would learn just how strong humanity could be. As he closed the book, Walker's phone buzzed. A message from Jane. "Final test successful. All systems ready." Tomorrow would be the last day of peace and the first day of humanity's fight for freedom. Walker only hoped they were ready for what would come next. The morning of humanity's counterattack began like any other. Imperial ships hung in orbit, their crews going about their usual routines. Lord Maxis sat in his command chamber, reading reports about Earth's successful integration. Then everything changed. At exactly 700 GMT, Admiral Walker gave the order. Begin Operation Throwback. Across the globe, hundreds of old radio stations suddenly powered up. They'd broadcast on frequencies the Empire had dismissed as too primitive to matter. The signal was simple, just steady interference, but it was precisely tuned to disrupt quantum communications. In orbit, Imperial ships suddenly went silent. Status, Walker asked, standing in the no-raid command center. Imperial quantum network is down, Jane reported, watching the old screens light up. Their ships can't talk to each other. Lord Maxis's first warning that something was wrong came when his screens went dark. His second warning was the sight of Earth's supposedly primitive satellites all turning to face his fleet. Impossible, he muttered. Then his ship shook violently. On Earth, Walker watched as the first wave of kinetic weapons hit their targets. Simple tungsten rods, dropped from orbit. No explosives, no fancy technology. Just mass and velocity. The Empire's shields, designed to stop energy weapons, did nothing against solid metal moving at orbital speeds. Multiple direct hits, a technician called out. 3 Imperial cruisers disabled. But Walker knew this was just the beginning. Launch Phase 2. Around the world, old missile silos opened. The Empire had detected these years ago, but ignored them. They were too old, too simple to be a threat. They didn't know that these missiles had been modified, stripped of electronics that could be jammed, equipped with simple mechanical guidance systems. In space, Imperial ships tried to coordinate a defense, but without their quantum communications, they could only use basic radio, which Earth was jamming with decades-old equipment. My lord, an Imperial officer burst into Maxis's chamber. We're detecting launches from the surface. Hundreds of them. Maxis stood up, his 4 eyes wide with disbelief. Impossible. Their weapons are primitive. Our shields. The ship rocked again as another kinetic rod struck. Warning lights flashed everywhere. On Earth, Walker watched the chaos unfold. The Empire's mighty fleet, which had conquered hundreds of worlds, was being torn apart by technology they had dismissed as obsolete. Sir, Jane called out, we're getting transmissions from the Resistance Network. Other worlds are rising up. They're using our tactics. Walker nodded. This was what they had hoped for. Earth wasn't just fighting for itself. It was showing the galaxy that the Empire wasn't invincible. In orbit, Maxis watched in horror as his fleet fell into disarray. Ships collided, unable to coordinate their movements. Missiles that shouldn't have been a threat slipped through shields designed to stop energy weapons. And through it all, that primitive radio interference kept them blind and deaf. Status report, he demanded. 30% of the fleet is disabled, his officer replied, voice shaking. We can't coordinate our defenses. And, my lord, we're detecting similar attacks across Imperial space. Other worlds are rising up. Walker received the news with grim satisfaction. Send the message. Every radio and television on Earth, every Imperial communication device that still worked, broadcast his words. To the Galactic Empire, Earth refuses your rule. We are not alone. You thought us primitive. You thought us weak. Now learn what happens when you underestimate humanity. This is your only warning. Leave our solar system, or what remains of your fleet won't survive to carry warning to others. In his command chamber, Maxis watched his mighty fleet fall apart, defeated by weapons that his people had considered obsolete for centuries. And for the first time in his long life, he felt something he'd never expected to feel when dealing with a primitive world. Fear. The battle was far from over, but the first strike had succeeded. Humanity had shown the galaxy that sometimes the old ways were still the best ways, and the Empire had learned a costly lesson about underestimating primitive worlds. 3 days after Earth's first strike, Admiral Walker stood on the bridge of the U.S. Defiant, Earth's first true space warship. Built in secret over the past month, it combined Earth's primitive technology with carefully selected Imperial systems captured during the initial battle. Engine room reports ready, Jane Porter announced from her station. All systems operational. Walker nodded, looking at the main screen. The remains of the Imperial fleet had retreated to Mars orbit, trying to regroup. But Earth wasn't going to give them time to recover. "Begin Operation Leapfrog," Walker ordered. The Defiant moved forward, leading a fleet of smaller craft. Each ship was different. Some were modified space shuttles, others were new designs built using stolen Imperial technology. But all of them shared one thing. They were impossible to track using Imperial sensors. In his damaged flagship, Lord Maxis received the report with growing anger. "What do you mean, you can't see them? They're primitive vessels." "My lord," his officer stammered, "they're using no quantum systems at all. Our sensors are designed to detect advanced technology. These ships, they might as well be invisible." On the Defiant, Walker watched as his fleet moved into position, launched the drones. Hundreds of small objects deployed from Earth's ships. They looked like simple satellites, but each one carried a powerful radio transmitter. Soon, the Imperial fleet was completely surrounded by a web of jamming signals. "Your move, Maxis," Walker muttered. The Imperial commander stared at his useless displays in fury. Without quantum communications, his ships could barely coordinate. Their advanced weapons needed quantum targeting systems to work properly. They were blind, deaf, and mostly defenseless. "Launch all fighters," Maxis ordered. "They can't jam visual signals." But Earth was ready for this too. As Imperial fighters streamed out of their hangars, they flew straight into clouds of simple metal chaff. Another primitive technology that played havoc with their sensors. "Phase 2, Walker commanded. Earth's ships launched their main weapons, modified nuclear missiles from the Cold War era. The Empire had defenses against energy weapons, against plasma, against all sorts of advanced technology. But they had nothing to stop simple nuclear fission. The first explosion lit up space like a new sun. Imperial shields, designed to stop energy weapons, did nothing against the blast wave of particles and radiation. "Direct hits on multiple targets," Jane reported. "Their shields are failing." The battle turned into chaos. Imperial ships fired blindly, their advanced weapons mostly missing without quantum targeting. Earth's vessels, guided by human pilots using basic radar and visual tracking, struck with deadly accuracy. Then came the biggest surprise. From behind Mars, a new fleet appeared, ships from other worlds that had been waiting for this moment. They had copied Earth's tactics, stripping their vessels of Imperial technology and returning to basics. "All ships, advance," Walker ordered. The combined fleet moved forward, surrounding what remained of the Imperial forces. Maxis stared at the devastation around him. His mighty fleet was in ruins, defeated by weapons that his people had abandoned centuries ago. And now more rebels were appearing, all using the same primitive but deadly tactics. "My lord," his officer said quietly, "we're receiving surrender signals from multiple ships." In the Defiance Bridge, Walker received the news with grim satisfaction. "Send the message to all Earth forces. The Empire's fleet is broken. Begin Phase 3, liberation of nearby systems." As Earth's ships moved past Mars, preparing to take the fight to Imperial space, Walker thought about how quickly things had changed. 1 month ago, Earth had seemed helpless before the Empire's might. Now they were leading a revolution that would reshape the galaxy. "Admiral," Jane called out, "we're receiving messages from dozens of occupied worlds. They want to know how to fight back. They're asking for our help." Walker smiled. The Empire had wanted to make an example of Earth. Instead, they had created something they never expected, a symbol of hope for every oppressed world in the galaxy. "Send them everything," he ordered. "Our weapons designs, our tactics, everything. It's time to show the galaxy that being primitive isn't the same as being weak." The revolution was spreading, and there was nothing the Empire could do to stop it. 2 months after Earth's successful defense, Admiral Walker stood in a room full of alien representatives. The meeting was taking place on Europa, Jupiter's moon, which had become the headquarters for the growing rebellion against the Empire. "Earth's tactics work," said a tall, green-skinned ambassador from a world called Proxima II. "We destroyed 3 Imperial control centers last week using your old radio jamming technique." Walker nodded, looking at the huge map showing the galaxy. Red dots marked Imperial strongholds. Blue dots showed freed worlds. The blue was spreading fast. The Empire never expected this, Jane Porter explained to the group. They thought controlling quantum technology meant controlling everything. They forgot that simpler technology could still work. Suddenly, all screens in the room lit up. A message was coming in from deep space, from the Empire's capital world itself. The image showed chaos in the Imperial streets. People were rising up, destroying the quantum control centers that had kept them in line for so long. "It's happening everywhere," the blue-scaled representative said. "Worlds that were under Imperial control for centuries are breaking free, all because Earth showed them it was possible." But Walker wasn't celebrating yet. He knew the Empire wouldn't fall without a final desperate fight. His fears proved right when the next message came in. "Admiral." A young officer burst into the room. "The Empire is gathering its remaining forces. Every ship they have left. They're coming here, to Earth." Walker turned to the assembled representatives. "This is it. The Empire wants to make an example of us, to stop the revolution. They'll throw everything they have at Earth." The room fell silent. Then, one by one, the alien representatives stood up. "Earth helped us when we needed it," the Proxima I ambassador said. "We will help defend it." "My world will send ships," another added. "And mine." Soon, promises of help were coming from everywhere. Worlds that had been enemies under Imperial rule now united to protect the planet that had shown them how to be free. Walker returned to the No-Raid Command Center, where technicians monitored the approaching Imperial fleet. It was massive, bigger than anything they'd faced before. "They're desperate," Jane said, studying the readings. "They've stripped their worlds of defenses to gather this fleet. If we can beat them here, the Empire ends," Walker finished. "But this won't be like last time. They won't underestimate us again." Around Earth, preparations began. The old missile silos were reloaded, the radio jammers were strengthened, and in orbit, ships from 100 freed worlds gathered, the largest fleet the galaxy had ever seen. Walker received a surprising message from the Resistance Network on the Empire's capital world. The Imperial Palace had fallen. The Emperor himself had fled. Only Lord Maxis remained in command of the fleet, driven by rage and shame over his earlier defeat. "They're not fighting for their empire anymore," Walker told his staff. "They're fighting for pride. That makes them more dangerous." Earth's allies brought their own versions of humanity's hybrid weapons, ancient technology combined with captured Imperial systems, ships that the Empire's sensors couldn't detect, weapons that their shields couldn't stop. "All forces report ready," Jane announced. "The Imperial fleet will reach Luna orbit in 6 hours." Walker looked at the tactical display. Earth's defeat would mean the end of the revolution. Its victory would mean freedom for the galaxy. Everything they had fought for would be decided in the next battle. He opened a channel to all ships. "This is Admiral Walker. The Empire comes to punish us for daring to resist, for showing others how to be free. They think overwhelming force will win the day." He paused, looking at the faces of humans and aliens united in defense of Earth. "Let's show them what free people can do when they stand together." The final battle for the galaxy was about to begin. The final battle for Earth began at dawn. Admiral Walker stood on the bridge of the Defiant, watching as the massive Imperial fleet emerged from hyperspace. Behind him, ships from 100 freed worlds moved into position. On Earth below, every defense system was ready. "They're not even trying to hide their approach," Jane Porter reported. "Just charging straight in." "Maxis is done with subtlety," Walker replied. "He wants this to end here." The Imperial fleet was enormous, thousands of ships filling the space between Earth and the Moon. But something was different about them. Their usual elegant formation was gone, replaced by a brutal attack pattern. They'd stripped out their quantum systems, Jane said, studying the readings. They're fighting primitive, like us. Walker nodded grimly. They've learned. But so have we. All ships, execute Battle Plan Delta. Earth's combined fleet split into smaller groups, each one led by experienced human commanders. They had spent weeks teaching their alien allies about Earth's military history, about tactics that had worked in battle centuries ago. The Imperial fleet struck first, launching a massive wave of fighters. But Earth was ready. Just like in the Battle of Britain long ago, radar stations tracked the incoming threats. Fighter squadrons rose to meet them, using both skill and numbers to overcome the Imperial ship's superior technology. In orbit, the main battle began. Imperial ships, fighting without their quantum systems, found themselves facing enemies who had centuries of experience fighting with primitive technology. Earth's fleet moved with practiced coordination, using radio signals and visual codes that the Empire couldn't easily jam. Multiple Imperial ships destroyed, Jane reported, but they're still coming. Walker watched as Lord Maxis's flagship pushed through the chaos, heading straight for Earth. They're going for a decisive strike. All ships, form up on me. We end this now. The Defiant led a squadron of Earth's best ships directly toward the Imperial flagship. Around them, the battle raged. Nuclear weapons flashed like miniature suns. Kinetic rods tore through capital ships. Fighters dueled with a mix of energy weapons and traditional guns. Admiral, Jane called out, we're receiving a transmission from the Imperial flagship. Maxis's face appeared on the screen, his 4 eyes blazing with fury. You've corrupted everything. Centuries of proper order, destroyed by your primitive ways. No, Walker replied calmly. We showed the galaxy that bigger doesn't mean better. That newer doesn't always mean stronger. And that freedom is worth fighting for. The Empire's last attack was its most desperate. Maxis ordered his remaining ships to charge Earth directly, hoping to overwhelm its defenses through sheer numbers. But Earth had one last surprise waiting. Operation Looking Glass. Now, Walker commanded. Hidden bases on the moon suddenly revealed massive mirror arrays, simple technology that Earth had prepared in secret. The mirrors caught the sun's light and focused it on the Imperial ships, heating their hulls beyond what they could handle. Their shields are designed for energy weapons and explosions, Jane explained with a smile. Not for concentrated sunlight. Caught between the mirror's heat, Earth's weapons, and attacks from the freed world ships, the Imperial fleet began to break apart. Ship after ship surrendered or retreated. On his flagship's bridge, Lord Maxis watched his forces crumble. Empire, retreat, he finally ordered, his voice hollow. Full retreat. The battle wasn't quite over. Some Imperial ships fought to the end. But when the sun set on Earth that day, humanity had won more than just a victory. They had helped free the galaxy. 1 month later, Admiral Walker stood in the new Galactic Council chamber, built in what used to be the Imperial Palace. Representatives from hundreds of worlds gathered to sign a new treaty, one that would protect the rights of all species, regardless of their technology level. The Empire thought advanced technology made them superior, Walker said in his speech. But they forgot something important. It's not the tools that matter. It's how you use them. Earth didn't win because we were stronger. We won because we remembered our history, learned from our past, and weren't afraid to try old solutions to new problems. As he looked out at the assembled representatives, humans and aliens together, Walker smiled. The Empire had wanted to make Earth just another conquest. Instead, they had helped create something new, a galaxy where freedom and creativity mattered more than raw power. The age of the Empire was over. The age of cooperation and innovation had begun.